It starts with a door that doesn't quite shut. The hinges whimper in protest as you nudge it gently with your shoulder, just enough to let the tiniest sliver of candlelight spill through. You're not supposed to be here. The royal study is forbidden to underservants after dusk, especially when the Duke of Trellingham is inside. But tonight, you were delivering polished boots, and now you're delivering yourself straight into a treasonous conspiracy. Your heart ticks louder than the clockwork lion outside the throne room. Inside, two voices murmur like velvet being cut with dull shears. One is the Duke, recognizable by the way he rolls his R's like someone who believes he invented the language. The other, you squint, that's the Lord Chancellor. Funny, he always pretends to be too sick to walk these halls. We strike before the Feast of St. Merrick, the Chancellor is saying. No more delays. And the boy? The Duke asks, pouring himself something too amber to be anything legal. Gone, quietly, before the king's final blessing. You freeze. You were raised on court gossip, feted with your supper since you first scrubbed flagstones. But this is no scandal. This is sedition, regicide wrapped in ritual. And you're not just eavesdropping. You're the only one hearing it who isn't in on it. Your foot creaks on the floorboard. Both heads whip around. You backpedal faster than a cat near a bathtub, whispering apologies, muttering about boots, and ducking into the hallway before they can ask your name. Your ears burn like they're being branded. You're not dead. Yet. But that door should have been closed, and now you know why it wasn't. Later that night, you lie on your pallet with your eyes open and your mouth shut. Not that you'd have anyone to tell. You're a laundry runner, lowest tier. You collect sweat-soaked tunics, secret-stained sheets, and the occasional drunken vomit cloak from nobles who wouldn't recognize you if you served them tea on fire. The next morning, as the kitchen girls gossip about the baker's love life, you scrub a wine stain from a lace cuff and think. Think too hard. Think like someone with something to lose. At midday, you pass the Queen Dowager's wing and hear a cough that doesn't match the rhythm of the guards. It's sharper, older. You glance left, no one watching. So you take a turn not meant for you and pretend you belong. An old servant's trick. Head down, shoulders forward. Move like you have orders. Inside, the Dowager Queen Eleanor lies in bed, white hair tangled like a winter thicket. She's half asleep, or maybe half dead. She doesn't blink when you enter, but something on her writing desk catches your eye. A book, leather-bound. The spine reads only, "For what they forgot." You tuck it under your tunic before you understand why. Two guards pass outside, and you duck into the hallway. One of them mutters something about the Feast of St. Merrick. Your pulse jumps. Back in the laundry room, you open the book slowly, like it might have teeth. It's a journal, the Queen's own hand. You recognize the looping letters from the royal signatures you've steamed out of linens before. But these aren't ceremonial words. These are personal, panicked, half-finished thoughts scratched between details about courtiers who smiled too much and a prince who refused to eat pears since the incident at the orchard. You flip ahead. A line jumps at you. If they try to crown him before my birthday, he'll never see it. He must not sit the throne. You blink. You read it again. Then again. This isn't just paranoia. It's prediction. That's when you hear the whisper outside the laundry chute. Button, someone says. Not butter or buttonhole or I dropped my damn buttons again. Just button. You remember your mentor's trick, old Merritt, may his arthritis rest in peace. He used to sew one extra button into each noble's laundry as a signal. A button sewn sideways meant don't trust the wearer. A missing one meant eavesdrop. A bloodstain near the thread? Run. You look down. The cuff in your hand has 3 extra buttons, all black, all wrong. You've just been drafted. You don't know who's sewing the messages. You don't know who they're meant for. But you know now that someone else knows. Someone else sees what you saw.
and they're trying to speak, button by button. By nightfall, you've memorized the laundry rota, the servant shifts, and how long it takes the chancellor's man to relieve himself in the rose courtyard. At dinner, you eat boiled carrots while nobles toast the prince's coming-of-age feast and speak of St. Marik's Day like it's a holy calendar event, not a ticking time bomb. You won't sleep tonight. You can't. Not with boots in your hands and
You wake to the sound of a dropped tray, porcelain shattering just outside your bunk. It's still dark, but the castle never really sleeps, especially not now. You've barely blinked since yesterday, mind replaying every syllable from that overheard conversation. It gnaws at you like a hungry rat under the floorboards. Today, you're assigned to linen runs near the Queen Dowager's chambers again. Funny how that happens. You don't argue. You just tighten your apron and tuck the old journal under your tunic again, its weight pressing like a second spine. The corridor to her room is colder than the rest. No fires lit, no candles refreshed. The old queen lies under threadbare blankets, her face turned to the window. You wonder if she ever actually sleeps, or if she just drifts, half aware, half dismissed. On the table near her bed, you notice a silver-handled dagger. Not the ornamental kind usually gifted to dukes at banquets. This one's thin, worn, the kind that's passed down quietly in families with long memories and short tempers. You're not a thief, but you're not stupid either. You slip the blade beneath your apron folds and murmur a cleaning excuse as you back away. She doesn't stir, but as the door closes behind you, you swear her eyes flicker open for just a moment. Back in the laundry vault, where the stone walls sweat and gossip dies unheard, you compare the dagger to a note in the journal. They found Father's knife in Lord Trellingham's quarters. He said it was a gift. It was not. That dagger isn't just a weapon. It's a breadcrumb. The pieces are stacking like mismatched plates in your head. Trellingham, the chancellor, a plan to crown the prince before the queen's birthday. And the queen herself? Possibly drugged, possibly pretending, possibly both. At lunch, you cross paths with a steward named Fallon, a wiry man with a twitchy eye and a fondness for turning secrets into soup. He makes an offhand comment while elbow-deep in parsnip stew. "Feast prep's been bumped up a day," he mutters. "Some say the prince is showing signs of nerves. Others say it's the stars. You know how his grace is about the stars." That's new. They're moving the timeline, and no one's telling the staff why. You head to the seamstress wing, ostensibly to deliver a bolt of cloth, but really, you're following the thread trail. That's where you find the next clue. A woman named Irina, cross-legged on the floor, sewing buttons with a precision that could split atoms. She doesn't look up. You're late. You blink. "What?" "Cuff run," she says, threading a needle. "You're the new one." You nod cautiously. "Guess I am." She gestures at a pile of cuffs. Each one has a tiny knot in the third buttonhole thread. You wouldn't see it unless you were trained to look. "Old code," she murmurs, not looking at you. "Started when the prince was 5. I kept it going after Merritt died. But it's not for everyone. Most can't spot it." "Lucky me," you say dryly. "What does it mean?" She looks up then, just once. "It means you need to watch the chandeliers." You stare at her like she's grown feathers. "The what?" She says nothing else, just hands you a bundle and sends you on your way. You spend the next hour staring at chandeliers like a lunatic. Then you see it. In the grand hall, above the long table where the nobles feast, a single pearl drop has been replaced with black glass. Just one. Unlit, unnoticed, but wrong. Above the chancellor's usual seat. Elsewhere in the palace, you find similar changes. In the chapel, a candle holder where one base is gold instead of silver. In the guest corridor, a tapestry panel with its threads slightly reversed, left over right instead of right over left. Someone's marking paths, leaving signposts. You start mapping them in your head. A triangle. No, a web. The throne at the center. That night, you return to the Queen Dowager. She's more alert now, eyes open, watching the moonlight stain her floor.
I know who you are, she says softly, voice like rust on old hinges. No, she says. She says, you're what I used to be. Invisible, but not blind. You kneel by her bedside, heart thudding like a war drum. They're planning something before the feast. Her lips twitch. Of course they are. They always are. You produce the dagger. Her fingers don't tremble as she takes it. He said it was a gift, she murmurs. He lied. I can help, you say, but I need to know what's coming. She studies you for a long moment. Then, there's a boy with the birthmark of a hawk. You'll find him in the aviary tower. He has wings, but no flight. Not yet. Right, because nothing in this castle is allowed to be simple. As you leave, you pass a window where the full moon hangs low, casting silver light on the gravel path below.
The aviary tower isn't on any official map, probably because it smells like bird droppings, damp straw, and whatever rotting things hawks find delicious. It's also a 6-story spiral staircase straight up from the West Garden, where the stone steps have worn uneven from centuries of royal feet and at least one underpaid laundry runner's. You make the climb before dawn, guided only by the faint scent of feathers and guano. Romantic, right? At the top, there's a narrow wooden door. You knock once, half expecting it to answer back in birdsong. Instead, a tired voice grumbles, "If you're here about the kestrels, tell the chamberlain they're molting, not malfunctioning." "I'm here about the hawk," you say. The door creaks open. A boy no older than 16 blinks at you from behind a frayed curtain of hair. His tunic is stitched with tiny bird feathers, and one of his boots appears to have been pecked to death. You see it then, just under his jawline, a pale birthmark shaped suspiciously like a hawk in flight, or maybe a drunk seagull. Either way, it fits. "I don't talk to strangers," he says. "Good," you reply. "I don't trust them." That earns the faintest smirk. He lets you in. Inside, the room is chaos. Birds flap in oversized cages, scrolls are strewn across every surface, and there's a suspiciously shaped loaf of bread perched next to a falcon hood. The boy's name is Tomas, and he's the royal falconer's apprentice. But more importantly, he's a watcher. His master once served the Queen Dowager before politics sent him to live among the birds. Now, Tomas listens more than he speaks and records everything in tiny symbols carved into old perches and crumbling window frames. "Symbols," he says, tapping the side of his nose, "don't lie. People do." He shows you one. A loop with a split tail carved just above the sill. "That means someone stood here and cried," he says. "Twice." You stare at him. There's a code for crying? There's a code for everything. You tell him what you've learned: the black glass chandelier, the button code, the feast. He nods along as if he already knows most of it. Maybe he does. "There's more," he says, "in the rookery ledger." You squint. "The bird log?" Exactly. Turns out the royal birds have travel schedules more complex than the court itself. Tomas pulls out a tattered book filled with dates, destinations, and recipients. One name appears too often for comfort: Chancellor Ebor, who apparently receives more pigeons than the palace chef receives chickens. "That's how they're planning it," you say. Messages. No records, no servants, just wings. And guess what? The Duke of Trellingham also has a suspiciously well-fed pigeon coop. You flip back to the beginning of the ledger and notice something else. A code stamped beside one date, 2 weeks ago, just after the Queen Dowager fell mysteriously ill. A single red feather. "Red means dead," Tomas mutters, or silenced. And it's marked next to a bird that never returned. You're not just dealing with a conspiracy anymore. You're dealing with an execution. Before you leave, Tomas presses something into your palm. A tiny carved button, this one shaped like a lion. "Top button," he says. "When it's sewn in, it means the wearer is being watched." You pocket it, carefully. On your way down, you nearly trip on a step that's been hollowed out.
Inside is a folded piece of parchment, smudged but legible. Her mind is clear. She must be removed before St. Merrick's. It's signed only with a serpent and a crown, which is, let's be honest, not subtle. By the time you reach the ground floor, the castle is waking. Cooks are arguing over lemon glaze, footmen are polishing banisters with existential despair, and the chancellor is already dressed like he's attending his own statue unveiling. You keep your head low, but your eyes sharp. In the laundry hall, Rena the seamstress gives you a single glance and hands you a cuff with the lion button already stitched. "Chancellor's tunic," she whispers. You feel it again, that pinch between the ribs. Fear mixed with fascination, like watching a candle burn closer to its wick and wondering if it'll explode or just fizzle. You deliver the tunic during mid-morning wardrobe prep. The chancellor barely notices you, but as you pass the tunic to his valet, you say just loud enough, "Top button's been redone, might want to double-check for alignment." A seed planted. And then you wait. In the palace, waiting is a profession. You wait for orders, for bells, for permission to sleep or speak or sneeze. But you're not just waiting anymore.
The gargoyle blinks again. Then it shifts, just slightly, just enough. You realize it isn't a gargoyle at all, but a cloaked figure crouching in the shadows of the old chapel roof, watching, not moving, and clearly not supposed to be there. You stay absolutely still, barely daring to breathe. Then you blink back, figuratively, of course, by slipping away from the window before they can see that you saw. Because now it's confirmed. Someone is tracking the tracker. The next morning, you carry a tray of salted pears to the prince's solar and pretend not to notice that half the guards look twitchier than usual. Their boots are too clean, their shoulders too stiff. That's not royal ceremony posture. That's search mode. Someone's lost control of something. And you have a theory about what. You slip through a rarely used hall behind the chapel, one that Rena once called too drafty for ghosts, too quiet for saints. At the end is a locked iron gate, but a well-placed hairpin, and you've got dozens, stolen from noble wigs, gives you just enough leverage to pop it. The stairwell is tight, spiral, dust motes hang in the air like suspended breath. You climb higher, passing walls stained with centuries of wax smoke and graffiti from servants who died before the invention of decent spelling. At the top, you reach the belfry. It's where bells ring on feast days and royal births, and once, according to Tomas, when a chef died dramatically during goose season. It's also abandoned. Mostly. You scan the wooden beams, the rafters, the shadows, and then you see it, a glint. Tucked behind a loose stone near the bell's base is a tiny roll of parchment tied with red thread. You pull it out, unwrap, read. Confirm switch, wine to be placed left of hawk. You frown. Left of the hawk? What hawk? And then you remember the prince's birthday toast is scheduled in the grand hall, a long table, royal place settings, and the prince's new pendant is, conveniently, a hawk crest. You're not a poet, but even you can rhyme hawk with poison. You dig deeper, literally. Behind another stone is a dried sprig of a plant you recognize from the apothecary gardens, henbane, nightshade's subtler cousin. Deadly in wine, undetectable in cider, and definitely not part of any royal garnish. So someone's using the tower to pass messages, old school, no birds, no servants, just ropes, stones, and bells that no one listens to anymore. You pull back the rope on the smaller bell, just enough to reveal its inner surface. There's more writing, tiny, carved with a needle. Merrick's feast, chalice switch confirmed, no revivals this time. Your stomach sinks. They've tried this before. You retrace your steps fast, nearly slipping on a bat feather as you descend. Outside, the sun glints off the chapel's leaded glass like it's mocking you. Back in the kitchens, there's a flurry of stress baking. You catch Fallon muttering about a new batch of crystal goblets being polished with vinegar water.
Chancellor says the prince's lips should taste no silver, he complains. You file that away. Maybe someone's worried the poison will react with metal, or maybe they're just making room for something harder to trace. Later that day, you spot Tomas near the stables, feeding a hawk with suspicious nonchalance. You signal him with the button tap you both agreed on: 2 fingers, wrist flick, button roll. He doesn't react immediately, but 10 minutes later, a pastry tray arrives in your bunk. Inside, wrapped in linen, a note. Hawk equals wine goblet. Confirmed. Prince prefers cider. Problem: they know. You stare at the last line for a long time. They know. They know he prefers cider, so the wine goblet might be meant for someone else. Or worse, the switch is a misdirection. You realize now that you're not in a puzzle, you're in a hall of mirrors. Every clue reflects 2 possibilities, and the only constant is that someone ends up dead. That night, you sneak into the servants' chapel, the small, forgotten one behind the kitchen gardens. You sit in the front pew and think. The candlelight flickers like it's breathing, and that's when you hear it. Footsteps, soft, deliberate. You duck behind the altar and peek. A man in velvet, hooded, carrying something metallic. A goblet? No, a bell. He places it on the floor and lights a small taper beneath it. A signal, right here, under the noses of the entire staff. You wait until he's gone. Then you approach. The bell is warm now, still ringing faintly. Inside, written in soot, is another message. Left equals loyal, right equals dead. No exceptions. Okay, now
You wake to the scent of marzipan and menace. The castle smells different on feast days, richer, heavier. The kitchens breathe cinnamon and cloves, and somewhere a goat is being sacrificed on the altar of artisanal cheese boards. The entire palace buzzes like a beehive fed on royal anxiety. Everyone is too polite to mention it, but you can feel it humming under every footstep, every hurried whisper. You carry a tray of gilded place cards into the grand hall, pretending not to notice the flurry of florists replacing centerpieces for the 3rd time. On your way out, you glance, just glance at the head table. There it is, the hawk pendant placed carefully beside the prince's goblet. The left goblet. 2 identical ones sit beside it, one for the Dowager Queen, the other for the Duke of Trellingham. You hope Tomas's hawk shows up today because you need an extra pair of eyes, or talons. Your instructions are simple. Observe, not intervene. Rena was clear. You get in the middle of a noble's drink and you'll end up on a pike, she whispered, while sewing a rose onto a satin doublet. They'll praise your loyalty right before they boil your spine for glue. Still, you've hidden a small slip of wax-sealed parchment under the Queen Dowager's cushion. Just one word. Not this one. You don't know if she'll find it, but she's sharp. Sharper than most of the knives around here. And definitely sharper than the prince, who thinks his name day toast is the height of political strategy. By mid-morning, the grand hall is transformed. Gold banners hang from the rafters. Musicians tune harps with theatrical flair. Peacocks strut near the entrance in a wholly unnecessary show of opulence. You're assigned to the wine table. Perfect. The bottles are labeled in the usual code. 1 dot equals red, 2 equals white, 3 equals celebratory blend. But one bottle stands out. Faint scratches on the neck, just where a ring might scuff it. You pocket that mental note like it's currency. And then you see her. Victoria. Yes, that Victoria, the Marchioness of Rosethorn, beloved of the Chancellor, and reputed to once have poisoned her husband with a nut tart despite his well-known allergy. She moves like velvet stretched over glass, smiling just a beat too long at every guest. And she's hovering, just slightly too long, near the wine. You keep polishing. At noon, the guests file in. The prince,
clueless and charming in that order, arrives first, waving at no one in particular. The Dowager Queen is wheeled in behind him, her gaze neutral. She nods once when her fingers touch the note beneath her cushion. That's either a blessing or a death sentence. The Duke of Trellingham is late, of course, always has to make an entrance. His tunic buttons are gleaming. You note the second one is sewn wrong, thread twisted. Rena's warning. He's not just in on it, he's deep in. The hall quiets. You step back into the shadows. The toast is imminent. You look for Tomas. He's not at the rafters, not in the gallery. Then you spot him, disguised as a page near the casks. He gives the smallest shake of his head. The wrong bottle is being brought forward. It's the prince's. The goblet is lifted. Chancellor Ebor clears his throat to speak, but the prince interrupts, smiling dopily. "I believe the queen should have the honor," he says, gesturing to the goblet intended for him. That's not supposed to happen. Victoria freezes. The duke's hand tightens on his napkin. Ebor's mouth twitches. The Queen Dowager smiles faintly. "A generous offer, Your Highness," she murmurs. She lifts the goblet. Slowly, deliberately. Your fingers dig into the linen napkin at your side. And then, a crash. Not yours, someone else's. The Queen's steward drops a tray near the entryway, shattering 3 plates and all semblance of composure. Guards move instinctively, repositioning the family to protect them. The Queen places the goblet down. Not emptied, untraced, untrusted. And just like that, the moment breaks. You move fast. Before the goblet is cleared, you swap it for a clean one from the opposite side. You make sure Victoria sees it. She will assume someone else intervened, maybe one of hers, maybe one of yours. You wake before dawn, knees stiff from curling up under the chapel bench, still dressed in yesterday's tunic. Your dreams had been sharp-edged, full of shattered glass and whispered toasts. When you open your eyes, the first thing you hear is not a bell or a rooster, but music. Soft. Wrong. The minstrels shouldn't be rehearsing this early, not unless. You bolt upright and peer through the chapel's narrow window. Below, torches flicker along the east corridor. Nobles in masks file through the courtyard, cloaked in embroidered velvet, every one of them bearing a symbol, a sun, a star, a serpent. You weren't told there'd be a masquerade today. You weren't told anything at all. You slip into the laundry tunnels and move fast. Through the dumbwaiter shaft, you catch fragments of conversation. The prince will enter at moonrise. Keep her to the left, he favors his right. Ebor says no hesitations tonight. You catch the smell of cloves and crushed roses. This isn't just a gathering, it's a ceremony. You reach Rena's corner. She's stitching faster than you've ever seen, her fingers a blur of thread and suspicion. "What's happening?" you ask. She doesn't look up. They moved the feast, split it in 2, one public, one private. Tonight's for the inner circle, old rites. Why wasn't I told? You weren't on the list. You don't like what that means. If you're not on the list, you're not in the plan. If you're not in the plan, you're either irrelevant or targeted. Rena hands you a folded tunic. You've been reassigned, wine bearer, private hall, you'll serve the prince. Perfect, absolutely ideal. You don the uniform, high-collared and lined with satin, a silver-threaded sun stitched at the throat. It fits too well, like someone's measured you in your sleep. Maybe they did. You make your way to the private banquet chamber. It's smaller than the grand hall, but more ornate, walls lined with tapestries of ancient hunts and royal scandals. In the center, a long table set for 7, golden goblets already filled. Candles flicker in dragon-shaped holders. Each chair bears a mask. Yours is the serpent. You place it carefully beside the prince's seat and wait. Guests begin arriving, each donning their mask without hesitation. The Queen Dowager is wheeled in last, her face unreadable. She carries no mask. "You won't be needing that," she tells you softly as you reach to help her. The serpent always unmasks himself. That's either terrifying or reassuring, possibly both. The prince enters next, but something's off. His gait is wrong, too confident, too balanced. He lifts the serpent mask and puts it on himself. Everyone freezes. Even the Duke, who's just arrived, arching a suspicious brow. You're not serving the prince tonight. He's pretending to be you. And that means someone's going to try to kill you, thinking they're killing him. You glance at the queen. She gives the smallest nod. This was her plan. But now you're a decoy, a living test. And the food is being served. You hover behind the wine cart, watching each plate arrive under silver domes. The prince, your double, laughs too loudly. He's enjoying this. Then, from the corner of your eye, you see it. Victoria. She's not supposed to be here. But there she is, dressed as a mere attendant, her mask shaped like a raven. She carries a wine bottle toward your doppelganger with the theatrical grace of something very, very wrong. You move. "Apologies, my lady," you say, intercepting her halfway and taking the bottle from her hands. "The prince has requested this vintage instead." You swap it, quickly, with one you'd pocketed earlier. She watches you too long, but says nothing. The meal continues. Bite after bite. Nothing happens. Until dessert. The prince, your version, takes a single spoonful of a custard tart and pauses. His hand trembles. Everyone watches. He coughs once, then again. Harder. You move forward instinctively, but the queen's hand lifts. Wait. He steadies, breathes, wipes his mouth. Not poisoned. Just a planted fear. A performance. He removes the serpent mask. Everyone applauds. Even the Duke, though his smile looks carved from frozen meat. You finally understand. The prince wanted to see who flinched, who panicked. Victoria did.
You climb the tower stairs by candlelight, each step older than your entire family tree. Dawn hasn't yet broken, but the sky is smudging toward gray, and you know time is collapsing like damp paper. The Duke is moving today. Rena's button code said as much, and Tomas's note confirmed it. If the final strike happens here, it'll be in this tower. At the top, the tapestry room. Most people forget it exists. Used to be part of the old Queen's quarters before the new wing was built. Now it's little more than a gallery of woven propaganda. Stitched lions, stitched conquests, stitched lineages too perfect to be true. But you know something others don't. Behind the third tapestry, the one showing King Aldrich heroically defeating 3 dragons in a fur-trimmed robe, you once saw a seam open just slightly during spring cleaning. You slip inside. It's a hidden chamber. Not large, not grand, but important. And not empty. A woman stands there, back turned, gloved hands. "Victoria," you say, though you're not entirely surprised. She doesn't flinch. "I thought it would be the prince." You shrug. Wrong snake. She turns, and there's nothing pleasant in her expression. It was never about the throne, not really. It was about removing the rot, letting it collapse. You glance around. Scrolls, sealed documents, one open on the table, titled Reconstruction Order, Post-Coronation Transition. It's not a coup. It's a replacement plan for everything. But why the Dowager, you ask? Why the poison, the games? She smiles faintly. Because she's the last obstacle. Everyone else is just theater.
That's when you see it. The tapestry behind her is marked. The threads around the queen's eyes are loose, altered. Someone stitched in a single black teardrop, visible only from this angle. Button code, Rena style. You take a risk. Don't drink anything today, you say softly, not to Victoria, but to the air, to the walls, to whoever's listening through the hidden vents you now know exist. The teacups have switched. Victoria's gaze sharpens. Who else knows? You step backward. Enough. You flee before her answer, down the spiral stairs, fast and graceless. A shout echoes behind you, followed by a clatter. You don't wait to find out who fell or who shouted. You need to reach the tunnels. Beneath the palace, there's a second city. Stone corridors, disused wine cellars, servant passages designed for speed and silence. You follow Rena's chalk symbols, an arrow here, a cross there, a spiral meaning turn now. You emerge in the old council chamber, dusty and unused. Tomas is already there, lantern flickering. She's accelerating the plan, he says. So are we. You unroll the stolen scrolls from Victoria's hideaway. Among them, signatures from the Duke, false land transfers, and something else, something unexpected. A forged document declaring the Dowager Queen unfit to testify, citing advanced mental decline. The same phrase they used to justify her removal from the Regency. You hand it to Tomas. This is what she needs. It's not enough to stop the poison. It has to stop the story. At midday, the Queen holds audience. It's rare. The public doesn't often get to see her anymore. Rumors have swirled that she's ill, faving, or worse. But today, she steps onto the dais. Unassisted, upright, with a paper in her hand. I have been accused of forgetfulness, she says, voice cool and clear. But memory, my friends, is not a weakness. It is a weapon. And today, I remember everything. You watch from the shadows as she reads the forged documents aloud. Then she produces the originals, ones you and Tomas found tucked in the tapestry chamber minutes earlier. Chaos ripples through the crowd. The Duke stands. This is an outrage, he bellows. The Queen lifts a brow. No, Duke, this is evidence. A hush, then a murmur, then applause, uncertain but growing. You slip out before the arrest happens. There's no need to see it. You already know how it ends. You return to the chapel, back to the wax-stained bench and the crack in the window that lets in just enough air to breathe.
The note said, "Gallery fire, curtains first." And that's exactly where you are now, standing in the East Gallery with a candle stub in one hand and a matchbook stolen from the wine steward in the other. This is not your usual post-dinner routine. Outside, the palace hums with celebration. The prince is officially of age. The crowd's been fed, the bells have rung, and most of the nobles are at least 2 glasses past good judgment, which makes it the perfect moment to burn something. You stare at the drapes. Red velvet, dusty, slightly moth-eaten, but thick, thicker than you expected. And if you're reading the plan correctly, they're also rigged to hide something. Behind them, a series of parchments pinned directly to the wall. One reads, "Succession timeline, new oath ceremony, dowager excluded." Another, "Emergency orders, in event of her failure, default to Lord Chancellor." This isn't just a backup plan. It's a takeover, a quiet one. You step back, heart thudding. It's not that you doubt what you're about to do, you just wish you had better shoes for it. The fire starts small, just a kiss of heat on the hem. But velvet burns fast when it's been treated with lemon oil and arrogance.
As flames leap upward, the smoke curls black across the ceiling. Alarms haven't sounded yet, but you know you have only minutes. You duck out the side door just as shouts erupt behind you. The guards will blame faulty wiring, or candles, or careless servants. That's the beauty of palace fires. No one ever blames politics. You race back to the inner courtyard, circling past the Queen Dowager's wing. She's watching from her balcony, arms folded. You give the smallest nod. She doesn't return it, but she doesn't look away either. In the chaos, you slip into the lower hall where the old court chamber has been repurposed for archives. You've only been here once, during an errand run. It smelled like beeswax and forgotten laws. Tomas is waiting. Did it catch? Like gossip, you say. He grins. You kneel together beside a crate of scrolls and produce the last key, the literal one. Rena gave it to you yesterday, disguised as a cloak pin. It unlocks the Queen's original charter, a document most thought destroyed. As you pull it free, you feel its weight, not just physical, but historical. It names the Queen Dowager not as a placeholder, but as a permanent royal advisor, immune to succession removal except by death or voluntary abdication, neither of which has occurred. The Duke's plan didn't just ignore the law, it burned it. And now, so have you, at least his version. You wrap the charter in linen and hand it off to a courier disguised as a kitchen boy. He'll get it to the court archivist, who will discover it tomorrow morning in time for the first legal inquiry into the Duke's actions. Nice timing, Tomas says, as the distant clang of bells begins. Fire alarm. Let's hope that's not our fire bell, you mutter. You part ways in the tunnel system. You head for the Queen Dowager's chambers to check on her. He doubles back toward the gallery to keep eyes on the guards. At her door, you knock once. She's already seated by the window. Was it necessary? She asks softly. You nod. Yes, and symbolic. She smiles faintly. The best gestures always are. You explain about the charter, about the courier, about how the Duke's orders have been reduced to ash and echo. She listens without interruption. When she finished, she offers a small box. Inside, a brooch. It's shaped like a serpent eating its own tail. People forget, she says. The serpent is not always treacherous. Sometimes it is simply eternal. You pin it to your tunic without a word. She dismisses you gently, like one dismisses a dream that ended kindly. You walk the long corridor back toward the laundry wing, footsteps quiet, heart louder than your breath. But something's off. The hallway is too quiet. And then, a hand grabs your collar. You're dragged into a linen closet before you can shout. The door slams, and standing in front of you, Victoria. Alive, unburned, unapologetic. You ruined everything, she hisses. You don't answer. She pulls a blade, thin, familiar. The same one you took from the Dowager's chamber weeks ago. You stare. That wasn't yours to take, she whispers. No, you say, but it wasn't yours either. She steps forward. You step sideways. Then a voice behind her. Don't, Tomas. He holds a crossbow, shaky, handmade, aimed like it's done this before. Victoria sighs. Traitors everywhere. No, Tomas says. Just fewer believers in your nonsense. You grab the door, pull it open. She doesn't resist. Not yet. But as guards arrive and drag her,
You sleep that night with one eye open and your brooch pinned close. Even dreams won't touch you, not when every creak of wood or gust of wind might carry what's left of Victoria's last threat. But when morning breaks, it brings no fire, no poison, no declarations of new regimes. It brings breakfast. And that, in a place like this, is unsettling. The kitchen staff move quietly, with that cautious energy that always follows a scandal. Something between fear and fascination. No one mentions the gallery fire outright, but everyone knows about it. They just pretend they don't. You slip a spoon into your pocket and excuse yourself from stew duty. Tomas finds you in the archive hall. He's carrying an armful of parchment and a worried look. It's spreading, he says. You blink. The fire? He shakes his head. The narrative.
Turns out, the Duke's faction isn't crumbling, it's evolving. The story is shifting. He's being painted as a patriot, a reformer who was tragically framed. Victoria's role is minimized. The poisoned goblet becomes a misunderstanding. The Queen Dowager's authority? Under review. You feel the rage rise, not loud, not sudden, slow, heavy, like water swelling behind a dam. You turn to Tomas. Then we go louder. The prince is your best bet and your biggest risk. Because the prince, despite his efforts to play the harmless royal, isn't ignorant. He knows how to read a room. He just prefers the rooms where people already agree with him. You find him in the indoor fencing court, dueling a royal cousin who clearly skipped sword lessons in favor of embroidery. You wait until the cousin yields in theatrical agony, then approach. Your Highness. He wipes sweat from his brow. You're the one with the wine incident. And the brooch, you reply, tapping the serpent pinned to your collar. He raises an eyebrow. You know it's a symbol of loyalty in my family, right? No, you say. I know it's a warning sign in mine. He laughs, just once. Why are you here? Because the queen is being erased, quietly, and you're letting it happen. That lands, just enough. She's not my enemy, he says softly, but she's not the future either. You tilt your head. She's not the future, she's the foundation, and you're standing on her. His silence is long, measured. Then, come with me. You follow him to his study. He dismisses the guards, closes the doors, and opens a chest beneath his desk. Inside, scrolls, documents, letters. All of them bearing Victoria's seal, the Duke's signature, the Chancellor's handwriting. Communications he'd kept, but never read fully. You hold up one. Do you know what this says? He shakes his head. You read it aloud. A letter to the royal notary requesting a falsified death certificate for the Dowager Queen, dated 2 weeks ago. His eyes widen, and then narrow. I thought they were just pushing succession forward, he murmurs. They were pushing her out, you reply. And when that didn't work, they aimed for you. He turns to the window. I need to fix this. You nod. Start with a public statement, tonight, at the gala. He blinks. You think a speech undoes all this? No, but a truth told in public can't be whispered away. That night, the palace transforms one more time. This time it's less opulent, more intentional. Fewer masks, more eyes. The Queen Dowager sits beside the throne, upright and sharp as ever. Tomas is in the gallery rafters. Rena lingers by the orchestra, dressed as a violinist, just in case. You hover by the wine cart again, full circle. The prince steps forward. He speaks clearly, of loyalty, of treason, of misdirection, of nearly dying by accident, and how the real threat isn't blades or poison, but the erosion of memory. He says the queen is not stepping down. He says the Duke's reforms were cover for a grab at control. He says, without names, that certain figures have been arrested, others exiled. Then he says this: the servant who uncovered all this stands among you, perhaps pouring wine, perhaps fixing a thread. They saw what I missed, and to them I owe more than my crown. Your breath halts. He doesn't look at you, but everyone else does. You bow your head, stay in place. Later, as the crowd disperses and music returns to fill the gaps, the Queen Dowager passes you in her chair. She doesn't stop, doesn't smile, but she taps the brooch at your collar, twice. You return to the chapel before dawn, where a single candle burns. On the altar, a scroll, unsigned. If the curtains burn...
The scroll sits quietly on the altar, its edge curling from the heat of the candle. You unroll it with steady fingers, half expecting a final twist, a trap, another layer of the story you thought you were now on top of. But it's not that. It's a list. 7 names. No titles, no ranks, just names. You know 4. 1 is Rena. 1 is Tomas. One is yours. You stare at the other four and realize something. They're still here, still operating. The resistance, or whatever it is, didn't begin with you. And it doesn't end with Victoria's arrest or the Duke's disgrace. This palace is a living thing. It adapts, swaps masks. You fold the scroll, tuck it into your boot, and blow out the candle. The day begins slow and golden. Outside, the courtyard is still wet from night dew. Birds call out over the ramparts. For a moment, the palace looks almost innocent again. Almost. But below that surface, the gears still turn. You report to the Queen Dowager's chambers. She's sipping black tea, her fingers tapping against the porcelain like a metronome of memory. "You've made quite the impression last night," she says without looking at you. "I didn't say a word." "Exactly." She glances at you then. Those who know when not to speak are the rarest kind. She gestures toward the window. "The prince will try, but he's young. He needs watching." You nod, not because you agree, because you already are. "You'll stay in the laundry, for now," she continues, "but we'll expand your routes. East Wing, Treasury, Royal Correspondence, eventually." You almost laugh. "You're promoting me." She smiles. "No, I'm weaponizing you." Before you leave, she gives you a key. Small, rusted. "Storage room," she says, "behind the old chapel. You'll want to see what's in there." You wait until nightfall to go. The door opens with a groan that sounds like it hasn't been heard in decades. Inside, ledgers, scrolls, and a long table with 3 oil lamps above it. This is no storage room. It's an archive. Not of royal records, but of traitors. Pages and pages of intercepted messages, coded logs, hand-drawn maps of palace blind spots. There's a sketch of a goblet, a list of poisons and their symptoms, a note scrawled in a familiar hand. "Delay the hawk, blame the weather." Rena's writing. You thought you were the first to uncover the conspiracy. You were the last in a line of quiet soldiers. And now, you're one of its keepers. Back in the kitchen hall, Fallon's replacement burns a stew and swears like it's an art form. You smile at the sound. Life here continues, at least on the surface. But in the rafters, Tomas has carved a new symbol. A serpent eating its tail. Below it, one word: ready. The Queen Dowager remains in her wing, but visitors now include advisors, auditors, and the prince himself. They don't speak of the attempted coup in public, but the changes ripple everywhere. Victoria's fate, not yet announced. The Duke, officially indisposed. The Chancellor, retired, quickly, quietly, no farewell banquet. One night, Rena finds you folding a tunic with a single crooked button. She watches as you tie the last thread. "You've got the knot wrong," she says. You shake your head. "No, it's right, just not for you." She grins. "I knew you were dangerous." "I just do laundry." "Exactly." You place the tunic in a basket bound for the Western Quarter. The code will be read, the message will move, and the game continues. But you've changed now. You're not just surviving the palace. You've become part of its bloodstream. A new balance has been struck. For now. As the bells chime midnight, you return once more to the chapel. This time, you light the candle again. Not to read, not to burn, but to leave your own mark. On the back wall, you etch a small symbol. A goblet, split in 2. And underneath, a name not your own. Because one day, someone else will stand where you stood. And they'll need to know. The story didn't begin with you, and it won't end with them. And now, the palace grows quiet once more. Somewhere, a door eases shut with the sigh of wood too old to protest. Candles gutter low. Tapestries sway just slightly in the unseen currents of drafty corridors. And all across those sleeping halls, secrets settle like dust, soft, forgotten, but never truly gone. You can still hear the occasional footstep, slow, purposeful, perhaps a guard, or perhaps a ghost of some version of yourself, still walking the path that brought you here. A path made of buttons and whispers, of stolen scrolls and burning curtains, of wine goblets, serpent brooches, and the patient stare of a queen who never really lost control. Outside, the wind shifts. It carries the scent of rain, of earth, of early spring. Somewhere in the distance, a raven calls, not quite mourning, not quite warning, just watching. You lie back, just for a moment. The stone beneath you is cold but familiar now. You know the patterns in the ceiling above you. You've traced them in silence, in thought, in fear, and now in peace. Because the story has paused, not ended, just paused. There are still scrolls to decode, still masks to remove, still corridors to clean. But not tonight. Tonight, you've done enough. So close your eyes. Let the final image be not of fire or betrayal, but of the candle's soft glow, of linen folded just so, of justice, quiet, invisible, relentless, walking beside you in borrowed shoes. And as you drift, know this: you were not a servant. You were the story, and it remembered you.